The human female stood in our interrogation chamber, her wrists bound with quantum restraints that could have held a Gorthak battle beast. Yet she smiled. Actually smiled. As if she were attending some primitive human social gathering instead of facing the most sophisticated torture devices in the known galaxy. My secondary hearts nearly stopped beating when I saw that expression. In my 400 cycles of service to the hegemony, I had witnessed the breaking of countless species. Proud Valorian warriors who wept like hatchlings within moments. Ancient Nixari scholars who surrendered their deepest secrets before we even activated the pain amplifiers. But this human, this supposedly fragile creature from that backwater planet called Earth, she looked almost bored. Commander Vorthkai, Intelligence Director Zalt 9 spoke through the neural link, his mental voice carrying the weight of the entire Third Fleet. The asset designation is Operational Unit 77 Alpha. Real designation, Elena Martinez. Elena Martinez. The name tasted strange in my consciousness, foreign and somehow dangerous. She had been among us for 6 rotations, masquerading as a communications technician aboard our flagship. 6 rotations of perfect service, flawless reports, and apparently absolute deception. "How long have you known?" I asked aloud, my voice carrying through the chamber's atmospheric processors. Elena tilted her head, studying me with eyes the color of deep space. "Known what, exactly? That your security protocols are laughably inadequate. That your encryption algorithms haven't been updated since your species discovered fire, or that you have been feeding me false intelligence for the past 3 rotations while thinking you were so very clever." The audacity. The sheer, incomprehensible audacity of this creature made my combat instincts flare. My hand moved unconsciously to the neural disruptor at my side. "You speak as if you hold some advantage here, human, don't I?" Elena's smile widened, revealing those unsettling white teeth that humans used for everything from eating to expressing aggression. "Tell me, Commander, when was the last time you checked the status of your primary defense grid?" A cold sensation traveled down my spine. Something no proper hegemony officer should ever feel. Fear. I activated my command interface with a thought, accessing the ship's primary systems. Everything showed normal. Green indicators across all defensive matrices, weapons systems at full readiness, shield generators operating at optimal efficiency. "Your pathetic human tricks won't work on superior hegemony technology," I snarled, but something in Elena's expression made the words feel hollow. "Oh, you precious, overconfident fool." Elena's voice carried a tone I had never heard from any prisoner before. Pity. She pitied me. "Do you really think we sent just 1 spy? Do you honestly believe that in 6 rotations, I couldn't have found others of my kind already embedded in your systems?" The interrogation chamber fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Systems that suddenly seemed far too quiet. I activated emergency protocols, sending urgent commands through the neural network. The response should have been immediate. Fleet-wide acknowledgement. Defensive positions, battle stations. Nothing. "You see," Elena continued conversationally, as if discussing weather patterns instead of what was clearly an act of war, "humans have this wonderful trait that you galaxy-conquering types never seem to understand. We are really good at pretending to be something we are not. It's called acting, and we have been perfecting it for thousands of years." My primary heart hammered against my chest carapace. I tried accessing the ship's external sensors, desperate to see what was happening beyond these walls. The view screen activated, showing the void of space where our escort vessels should have been maintaining formation. Empty space. Nothing but stars and the distant glow of the system's primary sun. "Where?" I began. But Elena interrupted with a laugh that sounded genuinely amused. "Where is your fleet?" She shifted in her restraints, somehow making the motion look casual despite the quantum locks. "Oh, they are still there. Mostly, though I imagine your crews are having some rather unpleasant conversations with their new human guests right about now." This was impossible. Humans were a Class C species, barely spacefaring. They had achieved faster-than-light travel only recently, and their technology was primitive compared to hegemony standards. Their military capabilities were laughable. Their tactical doctrine was based on ancient concepts of honor and individual heroism rather than proper strategic thinking. "You are bluffing," I said, but my voice carried less conviction than I intended. Elena's restraints suddenly clicked open. The quantum locks that should have held her until the heat death of the universe simply released. She rubbed her wrists where the energy fields had been, looking more annoyed than relieved. "You know, these things really are uncomfortable. Couldn't you have just asked nicely?" I reached for my weapon, but my hand stopped halfway to the holster. Elena hadn't moved to attack. She wasn't even standing in a combat position. She simply sat there watching me with those unsettling human eyes, waiting for something. "How?" The word escaped my throat before I could stop it. How did I escape? How did we infiltrate your fleet? How did we know about your precious operation? Elena stood slowly, stretching like some sort of predatory creature preparing for a hunt. "The real question, Commander Vorthkai, is how did you ever think you could invade a species that sent spies to infiltrate your ranks before you even knew we existed?" The ship shuddered. Not the gentle vibration of engines or life support, but the distinct tremor of weapons fire impacting shields. Battle was joined somewhere beyond these walls. My crew was fighting. My ship was under attack, and I was trapped in an interrogation chamber with a human who apparently knew far more about my mission than I did about hers. "Impossible," I whispered. "We detected no human vessels. Our long-range sensors showed clear space. Your fleet presence in this sector was minimal." "Our fleet presence," Elena repeated, her voice carrying that same amused tone that made my combat instincts scream warnings. "Oh, you sweet, simple creature. Did you think we would announce ourselves with massive battleships and flashing lights? Did you expect us to show up wearing signs that said human military and convenient hegemony script?" Another impact. Stronger this time. The lighting flickered and emergency systems began their warning cycles. Red illumination bathed the chamber, casting Elena's features in hellish shadows that somehow made her smile even more terrifying. "Let me explain something about human warfare," Elena said, beginning to pace around the chamber like a caged predator. "We don't fight the way you expect. We don't line up our ships in neat formations and exchange polite volleys until someone surrenders. We don't follow your convenient rules of engagement or respect your traditional concepts of honor." The ship shuddered again, more violently. Something was very wrong with our defensive systems. The impacts were coming too frequently, hitting too precisely, as if our enemies knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. "We infiltrate," Elena continued. "We subvert. We turn your own systems against you. We make you doubt every order, every report, every piece of information your own people give you. And while you are busy wondering who you can trust, we are already inside your defenses, already in your computers, already sitting at your command consoles, wearing your uniforms and speaking your language. No species could achieve such deep infiltration," I said. But the words sounded hollow even to me. "Our security protocols are absolute. Our genetic scanners are infallible. Our psychological profiles would detect any deception." Elena stopped pacing and fixed me with a stare that made my secondary heart skip cycles. "Would they? Tell me, Commander, how well do you really know your crew? Lieutenant Gresh, 12, who operates your tactical systems, communications specialist Torth Prime, who handles all your encrypted transmissions, medical officer Genthethate, who processes the biological data for every being aboard this vessel." Each name she spoke hit like a physical blow. These weren't random selections. These were key personnel, critical positions, officers I trusted with my life and the lives of everyone under my command. "They have served with distinction for cycles," I said weakly. "Have they?" Elena's smile became razor-sharp. "Or have they served exactly as long as it takes to establish trust while slowly, carefully, methodically compromising every system they touch?" The ship's internal communications suddenly crackled to life. But instead of the voices of my crew, I heard something that made my blood freeze in my veins. Human voices, speaking in perfect hegemony dialect, but with unmistakable human accents. "Bridge to all stations. This is Captain Sarah Mitchell, now in command of this vessel. All hegemony personnel are to report to designated containment areas immediately. Resistance will be met with appropriate force. Sarah Mitchell. Not Gresh 12, not the loyal tactical officer who had served under me for 2 full rotations. A human who had been sitting at my ship's weapon controls, with access to every defensive system, every tactical protocol, every strategic weakness. "Oh, that's my friend Sarah," Elena said cheerfully, as if introducing acquaintances at a social function. "She's been dying to meet you properly. Amazing pilot, that one. She can make a hegemony dreadnought dance like a pleasure yacht when she puts her mind to it." The lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing everything in the sickly red glow of crisis illumination. But in that moment of darkness, I finally understood the true horror of my situation. This wasn't a prison break. This wasn't a rescue operation. This was a revelation. We hadn't captured a human spy. We had invited an entire human strike team aboard our flagship and given them 6 rotations to study every detail of our capabilities, our procedures, our weaknesses. We had handed them the keys to our most secure systems and asked them politely to make themselves comfortable. "You wanted to know about human warfare," Elena said, her voice carrying clearly through the darkness. "The first lesson is this: we don't fight you where you expect us to fight you. We fight you from inside your own ranks, using your own weapons with your own people." "Betrayal," I managed to say. "You speak of betrayal as if it were a virtue." "Betrayal?" Elena's laugh echoed strangely in the confined space. "Oh, Commander, we never betrayed you. We were never on your side to begin with. This is what you call warfare. This is what you call conquest. You came to our system with weapons and threats and demands for surrender." The ship lurched violently to one side. Something was happening to our artificial gravity. Systems that should have been impossible to compromise were failing one by one. Critical systems that required physical access to sabotage. Physical access that we had willingly given to our human guests. "We simply returned the favor," Elena continued. "Though I think we are rather better at this game than you are." "My crew will never surrender to humans," I said, clinging to the last shreds of my military training. "Hegemony officers are bred for loyalty, conditioned for service. They will fight to the last being." "Will they?" Elena's voice carried a note of genuine curiosity. "Even when they discover that half their fellow officers are human operatives? Even when they can't tell who to trust? Even when their own commanders might be the enemy?" The horrible truth of it hit me like a physical blow. She was right. In a situation where anyone could be a disguised enemy agent, where any order could be a trap, where any ally could be a saboteur, military discipline became a liability rather than an asset. Trust became impossible. Command structure became meaningless. We had walked into a scenario where everything we knew about warfare was worse than useless. "How many?" I asked quietly. "How many? What? How many humans aboard your fleet? How many of your officers are actually our people? How many of your strategic plans we have been feeding back to Earth Command?" Elena's voice carried genuine amusement. "Does it really matter at this point?" Another massive impact shook the ship. This time I felt the unmistakable sensation of hull breaches being sealed by emergency systems. We were taking serious damage. But from what? Our sensors had shown no human vessels, no threat signatures, no incoming weapons fire. "Unless you are not attacking from outside," I said, the realization hitting like cold vacuum. "You are sabotaging us from within, making us destroy ourselves." "Now you are starting to understand," Elena said approvingly, like an instructor praising a slow student. "Though sabotage is such an ugly word, I prefer to think of it as aggressive technical assistance. We are simply helping your ship's systems express their true potential." The chamber door suddenly cycled open with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure. But instead of my security personnel coming to extract the prisoner, 2 figures in hegemony uniforms entered. I recognized them immediately. Lieutenant Gresh 12 and Communications Specialist Torth Prime, my most trusted officers. Except they moved wrong. Their posture was subtly different. Their expressions carried emotions that no properly conditioned hegemony officer should display. and when they spoke their voices carried accents that made my blood run cold. "Elena, we need to move," said the being I had known as Gresh-12 but who spoke with unmistakably human intonation. "The rest of the fleet is attempting to regroup. Sarah wants us off this bucket before they decide to sacrifice it to take us out." "Copy that, David," Elena replied casually. David. The creature I had known as a loyal hegemony officer for 2 rotations had a human name. Had always been human. "How's the extraction going?" "Better than expected. Their security protocols are even worse than we thought. Most of the crew is already contained. The ones who aren't are too busy trying to figure out which of their friends are actually enemies to mount any organized resistance." Elena turned back to me and her expression shifted from amusement to something approaching sympathy. "Almost. Commander Vorthkai, it's been educational, really. But this is where our professional relationship ends." "Wait." The word came out harsher than I intended, driven by desperation rather than authority. "What happens now? What happens to my crew? What happens to the hegemony?" Elena paused at the doorway, considering her response. When she spoke, her voice carried a weight that made me realize I had been fundamentally wrong about everything. About humans, about this war, about what we were actually facing. "Commander, your hegemony has been conquering species for millennia, crushing civilizations, absorbing cultures. You have perfected the art of overwhelming technological and numerical superiority." Her eyes met mine and I saw something in them that no prisoner should possess. Confidence, complete, unshakable confidence. "But you have never fought a species that conquered itself first." The 3 humans left me alone in the interrogation chamber, sealed behind doors that I suddenly realized had never been designed to keep prisoners in. They had been designed to keep everyone else out. The ship continued to shake with impacts that made no sense. Weapons fire from vessels that shouldn't exist. Damage from systems that should have been impossible to compromise. I was trapped aboard my own flagship, surrounded by crew members who might be enemies, receiving reports from officers who might be human operatives, defending against attacks that violated everything I understood about space combat. And somewhere in the depths of my flagship, human voices were coordinating the systematic dismantling of everything the hegemony had built. Elena Martinez had been planted as a spy. But what was blooming from that deception was something far more terrifying than simple espionage. It was the end of everything we thought we knew about war. The silence after Elena's departure lasted exactly 17 seconds before my personal communicator activated with a priority override signal. Fleet Admiral Corfax's image materialized above the device, his usually composed features twisted with barely controlled rage. "Vorthkai, what in the 7 hells is happening aboard your vessel? I'm reading marshing system failures across your entire ship and your tactical officer just transmitted surrender codes to the entire fleet." I stared at the hologram of my superior officer, trying to process words that made no sense. "Admiral, my tactical officer was. The truth hit me like a plasma bolt. Sarah Mitchell. Her real name is Sarah Mitchell." "Who is Sarah Mitchell? What are you talking about?" "Human, sir. Lieutenant Gresh-12 was a human operative. Has been for at least 2 rotations. Maybe longer." Speaking the words aloud made them feel more real, more terrifyingly concrete. "They have infiltrated our entire command structure." Admiral Korvax's expression shifted from rage to something I had never seen on his scarred features before. Uncertainty. Fear. "That's impossible. Our screening protocols are apparently worthless against human deception capabilities," I finished grimly. "Sir, I recommend immediate lockdown of all fleet assets. Assume any officer, any crew member, any technician could be compromised." The Admiral's image flickered as another series of impacts rocked my ship. In the background of his transmission, could hear alarms blaring aboard his own flagship. Crisis alerts that suggested I wasn't the only one experiencing unexpected difficulties. "Admiral, are you under attack?" "Negative. We are experiencing what my engineering staff is calling cascading technical malfunctions. Weapon systems firing randomly. Navigation computers plotting courses to nowhere. Life support cycling through extremes." His voice carried grim understanding. "Sabotage. How many of your crew are human?" "I don't know." Those 4 words. spoken by the most decorated military commander in hegemony space, carried more terror than any battle cry. Sacred void, Vorthkai. I don't know who I can trust anymore. The communication link suddenly filled with static, then cut to emergency standby mode. I was alone again, trapped aboard a ship that was apparently under human control, part of a fleet that was being systematically dismantled from within. The chamber doors cycled open again, but this time the figure who entered wore the pristine white uniform of a hegemony medical officer. Dr. Jenset 8, my ship's chief medical practitioner, a being I had trusted with the health and well-being of my entire crew, except something was wrong with his movements. Too fluid, too confident, and when he spoke, his voice carried that same unsettling human accent. I was learning to recognize. Commander, I need you to come with me. There's something you need to see. More humans? Actually, yes, though not in the way you are expecting. He gestured toward the corridor beyond the chamber. My name is Dr. James Chen, by the way. I've been serving aboard hegemony vessels for about 8 years now. You'd be amazed what you can learn when people trust you with their medical records. 8 years. 8 years of this human studying our physiology, our psychology, our weaknesses. 8 years of having access to the most intimate details of every crew member's biological and mental state. What did you do? I asked, as we walked through corridors that suddenly felt alien despite being aboard my own ship. Do? Commander, I saved lives. Thousands of them, hegemony lives. Believe it or not, James moved through the ship's passages with the confidence of someone who knew every shortcut, every maintenance access, every hidden route. Do you know how many accidents I prevented? How many mysterious illnesses I cured? How many crew members I kept healthy and functional while they went about their duties of conquering and subjugating other species? We passed other crew members in the corridors. Some nodded respectfully to their medical officer. Others avoided eye contact entirely. I began to wonder which ones were seeing a trusted hegemony doctor, and which ones were looking at a human infiltrator who knew their deepest biological secrets. Why? I asked. Why maintain the facade for so long? Why not simply poison us all and be done with it? James stopped walking and turned to face me. His expression was genuinely puzzled. Poison you? Commander, that would be murder. We are not monsters, we are soldiers fighting a war, but we are still human beings with principles. Principles. I tasted the word like something bitter. You speak of principles while describing the most elaborate deception in galactic history. Deception, yes, but not murder. There's a difference. James resumed walking, leading me deeper into the ship towards sections I rarely visited. We needed intelligence. We needed to understand your capabilities, your strategies, your weaknesses. We needed to be inside your decision-making process when the real war began. The real war. This war, Commander. The one happening right now. The one where your entire invasion fleet is being neutralized without firing a single shot at an actual human vessel. James paused at a blast door that should have required command authorization to open. Instead, it responded to his medical officer credentials as if he had every right to access whatever lay beyond. What lay beyond was something that made my secondary heart stop beating entirely. The ship's main cargo bay had been converted into what could only be described as a command center. Human beings, dozens of them, worked at stations that had been jury-rigged from hegemony equipment. Displays showed tactical readouts of the entire fleet, complete with real-time status updates on every vessel, every crew complement, every system, and standing at the center of it all, coordinating the entire operation with calm efficiency, was Elena Martinez. She looked up as James and I entered, offering a smile that somehow managed to be both friendly and terrifying. Commander, perfect timing. I was hoping you could help us with something. Help you? Absolutely. You see, we have successfully neutralized most of your fleet's combat capabilities. Engines offline, weapons disabled, communications jammed. Your crews are secure and unharmed, just confused and probably very angry. Elena gestured toward the displays, showing the tactical situation. But Admiral Korvax is proving to be more resourceful than we anticipated. The main display showed the Admiral's flagship, the INS Dominion, maneuvering in a pattern that looked almost desperate. Random course changes, weapon systems firing at empty space, shield generators cycling through different configurations. He's trying everything he can think of to flush out saboteurs, Elena continued. Cycling command codes, rotating personnel assignments, even venting atmosphere from certain sections to force anyone hiding there into the open. Very thorough, your admiral. He won't surrender, I said, surprised by the pride in my own voice. Korvax would rather die than yield to an inferior species. The human command center fell silent. Every person in the room turned to look at me with expressions that ranged from amusement to something approaching pity. Elena's smile became sad, almost sympathetic. Oh, Commander. Inferior species. She gestured toward the tactical displays surrounding us. Look around you. Really look. Your entire invasion fleet has been neutralized by a force you never even knew existed. Your most secure facilities have been compromised by people you trusted with your lives. Your most sophisticated technology has been turned against you by beings you considered primitive. Another human approached Elena, this one wearing the uniform of a hegemony communications specialist. Elena, we are getting reports from the other task forces. Similar success rates across the board. The 3rd, 7th, and 9th fleets are all experiencing coordinated system failures. Coordinated? I barely managed to speak the word. Did you think this operation was limited to your little invasion force? Elena asked, genuine curiosity in her voice. Commander, when humans decide to fight a war, we don't do it halfway. Every hegemony fleet that entered our territory has been dealing with their own versions of Lieutenant Gresh 12 and Dr. Genta Date and Communications Specialist Torth Prime. The scope of it was incomprehensible. Every fleet, every invasion force, every ship that the hegemony had committed to the conquest of Earth had been compromised before the first shot was fired. The humans hadn't just planted a few spies, they had orchestrated the systematic infiltration of the entire hegemony military structure. How long? I asked weakly. How long have we been planning this? How long have we been placing our people in your ranks? How long have we known about your invasion plans? Elena consulted a tablet that appeared to be running on modified hegemony hardware. The infiltration program began about 12 years ago, right after your species made first contact with human exploration vessels. 12 years. Give or take. It took time to develop the biological camouflage, the cultural training, the technological interfaces needed to pass your security protocols. But once we had the techniques perfected, placement became relatively straightforward. Elena looked almost apologetic. Your recruitment standards are actually quite predictable. You prioritize loyalty over creativity, conformity over innovation. It makes you remarkably easy to mimic. The communications specialist approached again, this time with greater urgency. Admiral Korvax is attempting to activate something called Final Protocol Omega. The technical readouts suggest it's some sort of ship-wide destruct sequence. Elena's expression hardened instantly. The friendly, almost casual demeanor vanished, replaced by something cold and professional. Military. Elena's expression hardened instantly. The friendly, almost casual demeanor vanished, replaced by something cold and professional. Military, time frame, unknown. The system is encrypted beyond our current access levels, and it appears to require biometric confirmation from multiple senior officers. How many officers? At least 3. Possibly more. Elena turned back to me and I saw calculation in her eyes. Not cruelty, not anger, but the dispassionate assessment of a military commander weighing options. Commander, I need you to understand something. We have gone to extraordinary lengths to minimize casualties in this operation, human and hegemony alike. But if Admiral Korvax is planning to destroy his own ship rather than surrender, that calculus changes. You want me to stop him. I want you to save the lives of everyone aboard that vessel, including the humans who are currently risking their lives to prevent exactly this kind of escalation. The moral complexity of the situation hit me like a physical weight. My own people preparing to die rather than face defeat. Human operatives, working to preserve lives even while dismantling everything I had been taught to believe about warfare and honor and military duty. What guarantee do I have that you will honor any agreement? None, Elena said simply. Just like we had no guarantee that your species wouldn't exterminate ours the moment you achieved technological superiority. Just like we had no guarantee that this infiltration strategy would work or that our people wouldn't be discovered and executed as spies. Sometimes, Commander, you have to take action based on hope rather than certainty. The main display suddenly flared with new activity. Admiral Korvax's flagship was moving again, but this time with purpose. Course plotted directly toward the system's primary star, a suicide run that would take the ship, its crew, and any nearby vessels into stellar fire. He's really going to do it, I said quietly. Yes, he is. Unless someone he trusts tells him there's a better option. Elena activated a communications console, apparently having the access codes to reach any system on the ship. This is your choice, Commander. Help us prevent a massacre, or watch your admiral burn his entire crew to avoid the embarrassment of surrendering to humans. The communication link activated, showing Admiral Korvax on his bridge. Behind him I could see crew members moving with the controlled panic of beings preparing for death. Emergency stations. Final system checks. Last messages to families who would never receive them. Northkai. The Admiral's voice carried grim determination. I see you are still alive. Have they broken you yet? Admiral, listen to me. They are not what we thought. The humans, they are not trying to destroy us. They are trying to end this war without unnecessary casualties. Propaganda. Psychological warfare. They want us to surrender so they can parade us around as trophies of their victory over the mighty hegemony. Sir, they could have killed all of us already. Poisoned our water supplies, sabotaged our life support, triggered explosive decompression in our sleep. They have had years to do it, and they haven't. That has to mean something. Admiral Korvax was quiet for a long moment, studying my face through the communication link. Behind him, the bridge crew continued their preparations for final destruction. Even if that were true, he said finally, surrender to an inferior species would mean the end of everything the hegemony represents. Better to die with honor than live in shame. Elena stepped into view of the communication pickup, her human features clearly visible to the Admiral for the first time. His reaction was immediate and violent. Weapons appeared in the hands of his bridge crew, all aimed at the communication console as if they could somehow shoot through the transmission itself. Admiral Korvax, Elena said calmly, my name is Captain Elena Martinez, United Earth Defense Force. I'm offering you one final opportunity to preserve the lives of your crew. A human dares to offer me terms. The Admiral's voice carried centuries of ingrained superiority, the absolute conviction that his species was destined to rule the galaxy. Yes, Elena said simply. A human who has successfully neutralized your entire invasion force without firing a shot. A human who has demonstrated that Earth's military capabilities are far more sophisticated than your intelligence reports suggested. A human who is giving you the chance to learn from this experience rather than die from it. Learn what, exactly? Elena's expression softened slightly, becoming almost educational. Learn that conquest isn't the only way to achieve greatness. Learn that cooperation might be more profitable than domination. Learn that the galaxy is vast enough for multiple species to thrive without destroying each other. The Admiral laughed, but it was a bitter sound. Cooperation? With primitives who achieved spaceflight only recently? With a species that hasn't even unified their own planet? With a species that has just demonstrated the ability to infiltrate and neutralize the most powerful military force in the galaxy? Elena corrected gently. Admiral, your intelligence about humanity is about as accurate as our intelligence about you was 12 years ago, which is to say completely wrong. You expect me to believe that Earth poses a genuine threat to the hegemony? I expect you to believe the evidence in front of you. Your fleets are disabled. Your crews are contained. Your technology has been compromised. And all of this was accomplished by a species you have dismissed as irrelevant. Elena paused, letting the weight of reality settle over the Admiral's shoulders. The question now is whether you want to be remembered as the commander who recognized a new paradigm, or the one who chose pointless destruction over adaptation. The Admiral was quiet for so long that I began to wonder if the communication link had failed. Behind him, his bridge crew waited for orders that would either save their lives or end them. The entire future of human hegemony relations balanced on whatever decision formed in that military mind. Elena's response to Admiral Korvax's question came without hesitation, as if she had been preparing for this exact moment for years, which I realized with growing certainty she probably had. Complete withdrawal of all hegemony forces from human territory. Immediate cessation of hostilities. Recognition of Earth as a sovereign entity with full rights to self-determination and territorial expansion. Her voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to negotiating from a position of absolute strength. In exchange, we guarantee the safe return of all personnel to hegemony space, complete technical briefings on the vulnerabilities we exploited, and establishment of formal diplomatic relations. The Admiral's laugh was harsh, disbelieving. You think we will simply abandon our expansion into this sector? Retreat like whipped animals because you managed some clever sabotage? Admiral, Elena's tone became dangerously quiet. I think you will do exactly what any rational military commander would do when faced with total strategic defeat. You will cut your losses, preserve your forces, and report back to your superiors that the situation has changed dramatically. Behind Admiral Korvax, I could see his bridge crew exchanging glances. They were military professionals, trained to recognize tactical realities even when those realities conflicted with political doctrine. The growing uncertainty in their expressions suggested they understood something their commander was still struggling to accept. No, Elena said firmly, it doesn't. Because the High Command isn't here. They are not the ones whose ships are disabled, whose crews are captured, whose entire invasion strategy has been reduced to scrap metal and wishful thinking. You have the authority to make the decision that saves lives or wastes them. The communication link flickered as another series of impacts shook Admiral Korvax's flagship. But these weren't weapon strikes. The ship was fighting its own systems. Automated routines conflicting with manual overrides as human saboteurs and loyal crew members waged electronic warfare in the vessel's computer networks. Sir, one of the Admiral's subordinates spoke quietly but clearly enough for the pickup to register. Our remaining functional systems show massive energy buildup in the human vessel's weapon arrays. They are preparing to fire. Elena shook her head slowly. No, we are not. What you are detecting is our ships decloaking. All of them. The main tactical display in our improvised command center suddenly exploded with new contacts. Ships appeared on the screen as if materializing from nowhere. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Sleek, unfamiliar designs that bore no resemblance to the bulky, heavily armored vessels favored by hegemony doctrine. But it wasn't their number that made my breathing stop. It was their positioning. Every human vessel occupied the perfect firing solution for maximum damage against hegemony targets. They surrounded the invasion fleet in a three-dimensional formation that would allow overlapping fields of fire, mutual support, and complete tactical dominance. It was a textbook demonstration of superior strategic positioning. Cloaking technology, Admiral Korvax said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of dawning comprehension. You have been watching us this entire time. Since you entered our territory. Yes. Every movement, every communication, every tactical decision. Elena gestured toward the displays showing the human fleet deployment. We knew your battle plans before you finished writing them. We knew your ship positions before you achieved them. We knew your objectives before you transmitted them to your subordinates. The scope of the human intelligence advantage was staggering. Not just infiltration of personnel, but complete surveillance of military operations. Electronic warfare capabilities that made hegemony encryption look like primitive signal flags. Stealth technology that rendered entire battle fleets invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. How? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Elena turned to me with an expression that mixed professional pride with something approaching sadness. Commander, 12 years ago, when your species made first contact with human exploration vessels, we immediately began preparing for this moment, not because we wanted war, but because we recognized the pattern. What pattern? The hegemony pattern. Expand, conquer, absorb. Your entire history is built on the systematic destruction of every species you encounter. You don't negotiate, you don't trade, you don't cooperate. You simply take what you want and eliminate anything that resists. Elena's voice carried the weight of careful study, of intelligence reports and strategic analyses that had consumed years of human planning. We knew that eventually, you would come for us. Admiral Korvax's image on the communication screen showed a being struggling with concepts that challenged everything he had been taught about military superiority and species hierarchy. So you prepared an elaborate deception to defeat us before the war even began. We prepared a comprehensive defense strategy that maximized our advantages while minimizing casualties on both sides. Elena corrected. The deception was necessary because direct confrontation would have resulted in millions of deaths, possibly billions. Your military doctrine prioritizes overwhelming force applied without regard for collateral damage. And human doctrine? Human doctrine prioritizes achieving strategic objectives with minimal loss of life, including enemy life, when possible. Elena activated a secondary display that showed casualty reports from across the disabled hegemony fleet. The numbers were almost impossibly low. Total fatalities so far, 23 hegemony personnel, mostly from accidents during the confusion of system takeovers. 0 human fatalities. 23. Admiral Korvax repeated slowly. Out of how many total personnel? Approximately 47,000 beings across all invaded vessels. The Admiral fell silent, processing numbers that defied everything he understood about military operations. In any conventional engagement between forces of this size, casualties would be measured in thousands or tens of thousands. The idea that a complete strategic defeat could be accomplished with fewer than 30 deaths was alien to hegemony military thinking. Why? He asked, finally. Why preserve enemy lives? Why not simply eliminate us and remove the hegemony threat permanently? Elena's expression became genuinely thoughtful, as if she were considering how to explain a fundamental aspect of human nature to someone who had never encountered it before. Admiral, humans have a concept called proportional response. We match our actions to the actual threat, not the perceived threat. Your invasion fleet represented a military challenge, not an existential threat to our species. Not existential. We came here to conquer your world. You came here to conquer what you thought was a primitive civilization with limited defensive capabilities. But the moment you entered our territory, you became our guests rather than our conquerors. Lena smiled, and for the first time it looked genuinely friendly rather than terrifying. Admittedly, somewhat unwelcome guests, but guests nonetheless. The human approach to warfare was fundamentally incomprehensible to everything I had learned about military strategy. Treating invaders as guests, preserving enemy lives, seeking minimal casualties even while achieving total victory. It was either the height of civilized behavior or a completely alien form of madness. What happens now? Admiral Korvax asked, his voice carrying resignation rather than defiance. Now we demonstrate that cooperation can be more profitable than conquest. Elena said, your fleets will be escorted to the edge of human space and released. Your personnel will be returned unharmed. Your technology will be studied and then returned with detailed analyses of the vulnerabilities we exploited. You would give us back our tactical advantages. Tell us how to defend against your infiltration methods. Admiral, if we can do this once, we can do it again. The only way to prevent future conflicts is to ensure that both sides understand each other's capabilities. Elena paused, consulting her tablet again. Besides, we are hoping you will carry a message back to your high command. What message? That Earth is interested in establishing formal diplomatic relations with the hegemony. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, cultural programs. We have things you need, and you undoubtedly have things we could use. Why waste resources on warfare when we could both profit from cooperation? The concept was so alien to hegemony thinking that Admiral Korvax actually looked physically uncomfortable. Species didn't cooperate in his universe. They dominated or were dominated. The idea of mutual benefit between different civilizations was simply not part of his mental framework. The High Command will never accept such an arrangement, he said finally. The hegemony does not negotiate with inferior species. Then the High Command will need to update their classification system, Elena said calmly. Because after today, humanity clearly doesn't qualify as inferior. A new voice suddenly joined the communication link. Human but speaking with the measured authority of high rank. Admiral Korvax, this is Fleet Admiral Rebecca Stone, commanding the Terran Defense Fleet. I'm transmitting formal terms for the cessation of hostilities and the establishment of diplomatic relations between our species. The main display shifted to show a new human vessel, larger than the others and clearly designed as a command ship. It had appeared at the exact center of the tactical formation, positioned to coordinate the entire human battle group while remaining protected by overlapping defensive fields. Fleet Admiral Stone, Admiral Korvax said stiffly, I lack the authority to commit the hegemony to any long-term agreements. I understand, Admiral, but you do have the authority to prevent unnecessary bloodshed and begin the process of turning enemies into allies. Admiral Stone's voice carried the weight of someone accustomed to making decisions that affected entire civilizations. I'm offering you something that has never been offered to a hegemony force before, the opportunity to withdraw with honor intact. Honor? You came here following orders. You executed your mission to the best of your ability with the intelligence available to you. The fact that our defensive preparations exceeded your expectations doesn't diminish your professional competence. Admiral Stone's words carried genuine respect, one military commander acknowledging another. Return to your superiors with accurate intelligence about human capabilities. Recommend diplomatic contact rather than continued military action. Help prevent a wider war that neither of our species really needs. The communication link fell silent except for the background noise of both flagships struggling with damaged systems and uncertain futures. Two military leaders, representing species that had been enemies for exactly one day, negotiating terms that could determine the fate of entire civilizations. Finally, Admiral Korvax straightened in his command chair, his posture shifting to something approaching formal military courtesy. Fleet Admiral Stone, I accept your terms for the withdrawal of hegemony forces from human space. I will recommend to the High Command that diplomatic contact be established through appropriate channels. Thank you, Admiral. Your crew will find that their systems are already beginning to restore normal function. Navigation, life support, and communication will be fully operational within the hour. Weapons systems will remain offline until you reach the territorial boundary. Understood. Admiral Korvax paused, looking directly at Elena through the communication pickup. Captain Martinez, I have one question. Yes, Admiral. Was any of it real? Your service record as a communications technician, your interactions with the crew, your apparent loyalty to hegemony ideals. Elena was quiet for a moment, considering her response carefully. When she spoke, her voice carried something I hadn't heard before. Genuine emotion, regret perhaps, or sadness for the deception that had been necessary. The loyalty was fake, Admiral. The mission was real from the beginning. But the relationships, those became real despite my intentions. Your crew members are good people doing what they believed was right. It wasn't easy to deceive them, and it won't be easy to leave them. Then why do it? Why maintain the deception when it clearly caused you personal distress? Because the alternative was watching millions of people die in a war that could have been prevented with better intelligence and careful planning. Elena looked directly into the communication pickup, her expression carrying the weight of every difficult decision she had made over the past 6 rotations. Sometimes, Admiral, the mission requires you to sacrifice your own peace of mind for the greater good. The communication link closed, leaving our improvised command center filled with humans who had spent years preparing for this moment. But instead of celebration, the mood was subdued, almost melancholy. These were people who had achieved total victory through deception and manipulation, and they seemed to understand the cost of their success. Is it over? I asked Elena quietly. This part is over. The invasion has been stopped, the immediate threat has been neutralized, and we have opened communication channels that might prevent future conflicts. Elena began shutting down the tactical displays, her movements efficient but somehow weary. But the real work is just beginning. What real work? Convincing two species that have evolved completely different approaches to interstellar relations that they can coexist peacefully. Building trust after demonstrating that we are capable of total infiltration and subversion. Establishing trade relationships between civilizations that measure success in completely different ways. Elena looked around the command center at her people beginning to pack up their equipment. War is simple, Commander. Peace is complicated. Over the following hours, I watched human efficiency in action, as they systematically restored control of my ship to my remaining crew. Systems came back online in carefully planned sequences. Personnel were released from containment areas with detailed explanations of what had happened and why. Technical briefings were provided that explained exactly how each system had been compromised and how to prevent similar infiltration in the future. It was the most professional military withdrawal I had ever witnessed. No gloating, no humiliation, no unnecessary demonstrations of superiority. Simply competent soldiers completing their mission and preparing to return home. Elena found me on the observation deck as the last human personnel prepared to transport back to their vessels. The view showed both fleets maintaining careful distances while final coordination was completed for the hegemony withdrawal. Regrets, Commander? I considered her question carefully. Did I regret the failure of our invasion? The discovery that everything I believed about human capabilities was wrong. The realization that my own species' approach to interstellar relations might be fundamentally flawed. No, I said finally. No regrets. Only curiosity. About what? About whether your approach will actually work. Whether cooperation between species is really possible, or whether this is simply a more sophisticated form of conquest. Elena was quiet for a long moment, watching the human fleet maintain their perfect tactical formation, even during what was essentially a diplomatic exchange. I don't know, Commander. This is all new for us too. We have never tried to turn enemies into allies before. We have never had to convince a conquest-based civilization that there's a better way to achieve their goals. And if it fails, if the Hegemony High Command decides that human capabilities represent an existential threat that must be eliminated, then we will be ready for that too. Elena's voice carried absolute certainty. But hopefully it won't come to that. Hopefully your admiral will convince his superiors that humans are more valuable as allies than as enemies. The human transport beam activated, bathing Elena in the characteristic blue glow of their matter translation technology. As she began to dematerialize, she offered one final comment that would stay with me for the rest of my life. Commander, your species has spent millennia proving that you are excellent at war. Maybe it's time to find out if you are any good at peace. And then she was gone, leaving me alone on the observation deck of my own ship, watching the most sophisticated military deception in galactic history dissolve back into the void from which it had emerged. The human fleet began to move, their vessels shifting into departure formation with the same precision they had demonstrated throughout the entire operation. Within minutes they were gone, vanished back into whatever invisible sanctuary they had emerged from. We were left with our disabled weapons, our restored life support, our humbled pride, and a message that would reshape everything the hegemony believed about warfare, conquest, and the nature of civilization itself. Elena Martinez had been planted as a spy, but what had bloomed from that deception was something no one had anticipated. Not victory, not defeat, but possibility. The possibility that two species could find a better way to coexist than the endless cycle of expansion and destruction that had defined galactic politics for millennia. Whether that possibility would grow into reality remained to be seen. But for the first time in hegemony history, we had encountered a species that offered cooperation instead of demanding submission. A species that chose preservation of life over demonstration of power. A species that had defeated us so completely that they could afford to be generous in victory. As I watched the last human vessel disappear into the stellar distance, I realized that everything had changed. Not just as the hegemony, not just for humanity, but for every species in the galaxy that would eventually encounter these remarkable beings who had turned warfare into diplomacy and conquest into conversation. The age of the hegemony's unchallenged expansion was over. The age of something new, something unprecedented, something that might actually qualify as civilized was about to begin. And it had all started with a single human woman who smiled when she should have been terrified, who treated enemies as guests, and who chose to bloom as an agent of peace rather than an instrument of destruction.